all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus 8. Money, unit of account, medium of exchange, store of value, and congealed life energy. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Money. A field guide for men who still notice reality, the congealed life energy heist, weaponizing the trivium to smash the parasitic protocol, dodge the shit tests, and reclaim Western masculine sovereignty. You stare at the numbers in your bank account and see currency. But I tell you to look deeper with the eyes of a logician. You are staring at congealed life energy. The word cost derives from the Latin conster, meaning to stand firm. To pay is to sacrifice a part of your own standing, a piece of your finite existence to obtain a good. Yet, a gynocentric society, drunk on the toxic wine of cultural Marxism, demands you surrender this vital force for nothing more than the proximity of a woman who views you as a utility rather than a sovereign soul. When she drops a hint for an expensive trinket, she is not engaging in flirtation. She is administering a parasitic protocol, a shit test to see if you're foolish enough to pay a toll for your own company. It is a metaphysical theft, a vampiric draining of your essence to feed a vanity that produces nothing, consumes everything, and calls it empowerment. This exploitation is not an accident of nature, but a feature of the neo-communist architecture that has hijacked the West. The critical theorists and their enablers have dismantled the objective reality of the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric to replace truth with narrative, turning the state into a glorified pimp that confiscates your labor to subsidize the very behaviors destroying civilization. Look at the family courts, where the best interest of the child is a euphemism for the maximum wealth transfer from father to mother, a systemic algorithm that rewards perjury and incentivizes the destruction of the nuclear family. The legal system operates on the gamma bias, magnifying female victimhood while minimizing male suffering, ensuring that the man who built the empire is stripped of his kingdom by a system that views him not as a creator, but as a host to be harvested. It is time to break the spell of this blue-pilled delusion and weaponize the truth. We must reclaim the stoic shield against emotional blackmail and the intellectual sword of logos to slice through the lies of the woke Inquisition. I will show you, through irrefutable syllogism and the harsh light of statistics, why the modern dating market is a rigged casino, and why the only rational move for a man of virtue is to refuse to play. We will expose the degeneracy of the cathedral of lies and restore the living spirit of Western civilization, which has always been and will always be, sustained by the rational, unapologetic masculinity of the free man. The parasitic protocol, economic shit tests, and the theft of vital force. Consider the viral recounting of a dinner date in a bustling American city, a scenario now etched into the digital folklore of our cultural decay. A man, having extended the customary courtship invitation, sits across from a woman whose gaze is fixed not upon him, but vacantly upon the glowing rectangle of her smartphone, her engagement hovering somewhere between 0 and non-existent. When the bill arrives, totaling an exorbitant sum for mediocre sustenance and 0 companionship, the man does the unthinkable in our gynocentric hierarchy. He pays for his share only and excuses himself. The woman's reaction is not one of confusion or sadness, but a paralyzed, silent rage, a freeze response straight from the reptilian brain. This is not the shock of a romantic partner spurned. It is the calculated fury of a slave master who has watched the field hand drop the plow and walk away. Her anger proves she viewed him not as a sovereign individual to be known, but as a utility to be harvested. By refusing to subsidize her vanity, he committed the cardinal sin of the modern matriarchy. He revoked the extraction of his value. To understand why this interaction is not merely rude, but metaphysically criminal, we must return to the trivium and the etymological roots of our language to strip away the lies of the egalitarian left. The word cost derives from the Latin constere, literally meaning to stand firm. In the rigorous logic of the ancient world, the cost of a thing was what it cost you to stand firm in your possession of it. It was the measure of the standing, the life force, or the resources you had to sacrifice to obtain the good. Here is the linguistic weapon the cultural Marxists have dulled. When a woman demands a man pay merely for the privilege of sitting in her presence, she is demanding. He sacrifices standing without receiving value in return. She treats his life energy, the hours of toil transmuted into gold, as a tribute owed to her simply for existing. This is the definition of a parasite, an organism that inhabits a host and consumes nutrients without providing benefit, slowly draining the vitality of the host until the host collapses. This parasitism is codified in the evolutionary biology of the hypergamous loophole, a mechanism once necessary for survival in a brutal prehistoric world, but now a weapon of mass financial destruction. In the state of nature, the female of the species required the provisioning and protection of the strongest male to ensure the survival of her offspring. This was a biological transaction with a reciprocal exchange of loyalty and fidelity. However, the modern welfare state and the family court industrial complex have severed the need for this reciprocity. The state has become the surrogate husband, providing the resources and protection via the coerced labor of the tax-paying male, while the biological drive for hypergamy, the instinct to seek the best genes, remains unchecked. This creates a one-way street of resource extraction where women can utilize the loophole to extract resources from multiple hosts, men via dating, divorce, or taxes, while offering zero reciprocal loyalty. It is an evolutionary glitch weaponized by a legal system designed to disempower men. We must also dismantle the chivalry frame, a word the feminist harpies have dragged through the mud of history to weaponize male benevolence. True chivalry, the code of the medieval knight, was a martial doctrine designed to curb the violent power of the warrior class so that the weak were protected from the strong. It was a check on strength, not a mandate to fund the narcissism of the manipulative. When a modern woman demands you pay for her dinner under the guise of chivalry, she is engaging in a linguistic sleight of hand so audacious it would make a sophist blush. She is asserting that her mere existence constitutes a weakness that requires your subsidy. Nonsense. A knight does not protect the weak. A knight protects the virtuous. To subsidize a woman who engages in the psychological sadism of the spotlight stress test, creating a public scene or putting a man on the spot to gauge his reaction while holding the social hammer over his head, is not chivalry. It is cowardice. It is capitulation to a tyrant. This brings us to the syllogistic destruction of the impress me dynamic, a logical hammer to shatter the glass ceiling of female entitlement. Watch closely, for this logic is irrefutable. Major premise, a relationship based on transactional bribery, where value is exchanged solely for access to the person, is a form of prostitution, not romance. Minor premise, modern dating rituals, specifically the impress me phase, demand men prove their worth through financial hemorrhage, buying dinners, drinks, and gifts before any character, virtue, or mutual respect is established. Therefore, the modern impress me dating phase is a sanitized form of negotiation for services that mimics the transactional structure of prostitution, but lacks the honesty of a signed contract. You are not courting a soul. You are bidding on a lease for a biological vessel that depreciates the moment the ink is dry. This entire rotten edifice relies on the violation of the congealed life-energy axiom, a truth so potent that if fully grasped would burn the globalist economy to the ground overnight. Money is not a social construct, as the postmodernist university professors would have you believe. It is frozen time. It is the literal hours of your finite existence, transmuted into value through your labor, your sweat, and your intellect. Every dollar in your pocket represents a moment of your life that you can never get back. When a woman hints for a gift, or expects a free meal, or uses the state to seize your assets, she is engaging in a metaphysical crime of vampirism. She is demanding that you sacrifice your irreplaceable time, your very life force, to feed her fleeting vanity or to satiate her materialism. To let this happen without resistance is not an act of love. It is an act of suicide, a slow bleeding out of your potential to prop up a system that despises you. The gaslighting required to maintain this system is enforced through the gamma bias in media representation, a pervasive cultural schizophrenia designed to demonize male rationality as cheapness. Turn on the TV, that great hypnotizer of the masses, and observe the narrative programming. Sitcoms and movies relentlessly portray a man refusing to spend money on a woman as puny, abusive, or cheap, a character flaw worthy of mockery. Conversely, a woman demanding lavish spending is framed as knowing her worth or high value. This is systemic cultural brainwashing designed to shame men into compliance with their own exploitation. They want you to believe that your prudence is a vice and her greed is a virtue. It is the classic tactic of the abuser: invert the morality of the victim so they defend their own chains. We must stand firm in the face of this psychological warfare. The demand for unearned resources is a tactic of the weak to enslave the strong. You are the creator, the builder, the protector of civilization. Your capital is the seed of the future. Recognize the cost of every transaction, not in the fiat currency printed by a corrupt central bank, but in the conster, the standing of your life that you must give up to possess it. Do not let the parasites feed. Do not let the freeze response of the entitled deter you. Walk away from the table. Keep your time. Keep your life. And in doing so, you begin the slow, necessary work of rebuilding the West on a foundation of truth, honor, and unyielding logic. This systemic robbery is predicated on a foundational lie, so audacious it would make a demon blush. The assertion that money is a social construct pliable to the whims of political ideology, rather than a reflection of natural law. By attacking the grammar of value, confusing the medium with the essence, the leftist parasite attempts to divorce effort from reward, creating an intellectual vacuum where they can insert their totalitarian god, the state. They claim the medium of exchange is arbitrary. Therefore, the logic of your ownership is void, a fallacy designed to enshrine equity as the supreme virtue over truth. We must employ the trivium to dissect this rot, proving that while they can print paper, they cannot repeal the thermodynamics of human action, and that their entire utopian house of cards is built upon the sand of biological denial, the cathedral of lies, critical theory, and the state as neo-communist pimp. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. The first law of thermodynamics dictates, yet the modern monetary alchemists of the fiat state believe they can conjure wealth from the void by the mere striking of a key. These charlatans, peddling the degenerate dogma that money is merely a social construct disconnected from the labor of the man who earns it, are not just economists, they are sorcerers of the lowest order, attempting to violate the laws of physics to fund their socialist utopias. Money is not an arbitrary agreement, it is congealed life energy, a frozen store of the time, sweat, and risk you expended to acquire it. When the central bank, that grand temple of usury, expands the money supply to buy votes for the matriarchy or fund equity programs, they do not create value, they steal yours. It is the invisible theft of inflation, the dilution of your life's work, a mechanism designed to crush the independent man's savings under the boot of state-sanctioned debasement. They claim to manipulate the medium, but they cannot escape the reality that value is an objective law of nature, and every dollar printed to cover the debts of the unproductive is a direct tax on the productive, a violation of the thermodynamic equilibrium of your life. Let us cut through the semantic fog of the left with the blade of etymology and reveal equity for what it truly is. not justice, but envy weaponized by the state. The term derives from equitas, implying fairness, yet in the clause of the cultural Marxist, it has mutated into a demand for an impossible equality of outcome, a mathematical absurdity that can only exist if a totalitarian enforcer intervenes to lope the heads off the tall poppies. This pathological altruism is a mask for a profound resentment, the demand that the strong carry the weak not out of charity, but out of guilt enforced by the gun of the taxman. The major premise of their dogma is that all individuals are identical blank slates. The minor premise is that unequal outcomes are evidence of oppression. The conclusion is that the state must use force to homogenize result. This syllogism is the logic of the graveyard, for to achieve it requires the total destruction of excellence, the punishment of competence, and the rewarding of mediocrity, a system where the parasite is elevated above the host. Consider the historical record which screams the truth that the modern state views the autonomous male not as a citizen to be respected, but as a rogue resource to be exploited. Take the bachelor tax proposed in Wyoming in 1898 and floated in modern UK legislations, laws explicitly designed to punish men who refuse to sign a marriage contract that has been rigged against them. This is not economic policy, it is shakedown economics, a protection racket run by the neo-communist pimp. The state realizes that if a man keeps his own labor and his own capital, he cannot be controlled. Therefore, he must be penalized for not contributing his resources to the matriarchal hive, for not providing a host for the tax farm's next generation of serfs. They attempt to frame bachelorhood as a failing of society, when in reality it is the only rational response of a man who sees the crooked table and refuses to play the game. We must apply the trivium to dissect the Marxist utopia, for it collapses under the weight of its own illogic. Major premise: for a society to be free, voluntary cooperation must be the primary mode of exchange. Minor premise: Marxism and critical theory require the suppression of dissent and the confiscation of property to enforce their ideology. Conclusion: therefore, Marxism and critical theory are inherently anti-freedom systems reliant on coercion. This is the woke inquisition, a secular witch hunt where the genders have been reversed. Today, the shrieking harpies of intersectionality sit in the judgment seat, demanding purity tests of ideology rather than examining the content of one's character. The accused is the rational stoic man, and his crime is the heresy of speaking biological truth. They do not seek emancipation, they seek inversion, turning the natural hierarchy of merit into a flat plane of misery. The betrayal of the Western canon is complete, for the classical liberalism that once shielded the individual has been warped by cultural Marxism into a suicide pact. The tolerance of the Enlightenment, intended to protect the marketplace of ideas, is now exploited to tolerate the intolerant ideologies that seek to dismantle the very foundation of that market. We opened the gates to the barbarians in the name of compassion, and they have proceeded to burn the library of our ancestors. The Frankfurt School, those high priests of nihilism, pivoted from seeking objective truth, a masculine pursuit, to seeking emancipation from reason itself. Critical theory is not philosophy. It is a rhetorical virus designed to dissolve the logical structures of grammar and logic that allow the mind to perceive reality, leaving the host defenseless against the state's propaganda. By attacking the validity of language and reason, they sever the connection between your mind and reality, trapping you in a hall of mirrors where there is no up, no down, and no truth. In this vacuum of logic, the state appoints itself the sole moral authority, a false god replacing nature and the divine. They have created a moral wasteland where legality supersedes morality, permitting the state to confiscate male labor through taxation and alimony, redistributing your life force to the voting bloc of the dependent class to purchase political power. The state acts as the ultimate pimp, collecting the earnings of the men who build the civilization and handing it to the women and the oppressed to ensure their loyalty at the ballot box. They have decoupled right and wrong from the transcendentals, the good, the true, and the beautiful, and tethered them to the whims of the bureaucracy. making a criminal of the man who questions the collective and a saint of the parasite who feeds upon him. Therefore, we arrive at the final irrefutable logic that must shatter the spell of ignorance. Critical theory and feminism are inherently false ideologies that can only exist through the continuous application of state coercion. They cannot survive in the sunlight of voluntary cooperation. Let us demonstrate this with a final syllogism, major premise. An ideology that requires the suppression of biological reality to function is built on a lie. Minor premise: critical theory and feminism suppress biological reality, denying sexual dimorphism, hypergamy, and the inherent differences between the sexes by claiming all disparities are social constructs. Conclusion: therefore, critical theory and feminism are lies sustained only by force, not by truth. The remedy is not more debate, but a ruthless application of the trivium and a reclamation of the masculine spirit. Reject the feminization that presages the fall. Weaponize the truth and cast out the degenerates. The cathedral of lies is built on sand. Speak the word and watch it crumble. But what is the dark sorcery that permits this grotesque theater to play out unchallenged in broad daylight? It is a deliberate fabrication of perception, a hallucination mandated by the state to justify the theft of male life force. You must understand that for the parasite to feed, the host must be demonized, and this is achieved through the insidious psychological mechanism known as gamma bias. This is the lens that twists reality, amplifying female victimhood while minimizing female aggression, rendering the man a perpetual villain regardless of his virtue. This distortion is not an accident. It is the product of a massive, profitable industry of hate that has monetized the suffering of men, turning the very concept of justice into a subsidiary of the feminist grievance market. The gynocentric guillotine, institutional bias, and the erasure of male justice. Consider the tragic archetype of the divorced dad, a modern saint of the gynocentric order, stripped of his dignity and reduced to a mere conduit for resources. I have seen this man. He is the engineer who built the bridges, the lineman who kept the lights on, now living in a studio apartment while his ex-wife inhabits the marital home he funded. The state, wielding its monopoly on violence, enforces an extraction racket that would make a medieval tax collector blush. He works 60 hours a week, yet after the child support, a euphemism for spousal support disguised as altruism, is garnished, he retains barely enough for sustenance. The system does not merely fail him, it feeds upon him. This destitution is not a bug in the software, it is the defining feature. When a man is driven to suicide or destitution because he cannot pay the tribute demanded by a court that refuses to listen to his pleas of poverty, the system declares it a victory for the safety of the mother. This is the deliberate destruction of male utility, turning the builder of civilization into a mere battery to be drained and discarded. To understand how this is permitted, we must deploy the trivium and dissect the psychological warfare waged against the male mind, specifically through the lens of gamma bias. This cognitive distortion acts as a filter for reality, amplifying female victimhood while minimizing female aggression, and simultaneously minimizing male victimhood while amplifying male aggression. Grammar reveals the nature of the word. Bias, from the Greek epikarsios, meaning slanted or oblique. The legal system has institutionalized this slant. When a woman strikes a man, it is framed as defense or ignored entirely. When a man raises his voice, it is intimidation or terrorism. By distorting the perception of agency, the legal matrix ensures that the female is always the damsel in distress and the male is always the dragon to be slain. This is not an accident of oversight, but a deliberate manipulation of the sensory inputs of the populace to justify the continued dispossession of men. We must look past the romanticized veneer of social justice and recognize modern feminism for what it truly is, a massive profit-driven corporation. It is an industry fueled by conflict, a leviathan comprised of NGOs, divorce attorneys, and HR departments that would collapse tomorrow if the sexes actually achieved harmony. There is no financial incentive for these actors to solve problems. Their profit model depends entirely on the perpetuation of grievance. They are the merchants of chaos, importing outrage to export legislation. Every time they convince a woman that her husband is the oppressor, or that the workplace is a hostile patriarchy, they generate a billable hour. They have a vested financial interest in keeping men down, for without the oppressor, the victim has no claim to the endless federal grants and legal settlements that keep the gears of this hate machine greased. This institutionalized malice manifests most clearly in the erosion of due process, particularly within Title IX tribunals and sexual assault cases. The ancient right to face one's accuser, to cross-examine evidence, and to be presumed innocent until proven guilty has been summarily suspended for the male sex. The mantra "believe all women" is a direct assault on the logos of Western jurisprudence, replacing evidence with emotion and trial with mob rule. We see the Star Chamber reborn on university campuses and in corporate boardrooms, where a man's career, the very means by which he generates his life energy, can be obliterated by a mere accusation. There is no requirement for proof, only for the performance of victimhood. This reduces the male to a sacrificial lamb, slaughtered on the altar of political correctness to appease the jealous gods of equity. Let us construct a syllogism to demonstrate the irrefutable logic of this corruption. Major premise: justice requires impartiality based on evidence of specific wrongdoing. Minor premise: family courts award custody and resources primarily to women based on gender, the tender years doctrine in disguise, regardless of evidence of maternal fitness or paternal capability. Conclusion: therefore, family courts do not dispense justice. They dispense genocentric privilege. The logic is inescapable. If the outcome is predetermined by the sex of the participants, the process is a sham. The court has become a theater where the script is written before the actors even take the stage, and the male is always cast as the villain. Consider the phrase "best interest of the child," a linguistic weapon used to bludgeon fathers into submission. Etymologically and practically, this phrase has been decoded to mean maximum transfer of wealth from the father to the mother. The state does not view the child as a human being with a right to a relationship with both parents. The state views the child as a hostage. By holding the child hostage, the state ensures the continued extraction of the male's congealed life energy. His money long after the marriage has dissolved. If the father wishes to see the hostage, he must pay the ransom. If he cannot pay, he is punished. This is not benevolence. It is a protection racket of the highest order, incentivizing the fracturing of the family unit to feed the bureaucratic beast. Underpinning this legal theft is the Duluth model, a study in pure pathology that has infected police training and judicial policy globally. This model operates on the ideological assumption that men are aggressors and women are victims a priori. It refuses to acknowledge the reality of female violence or reciprocal abuse, by asserting that male violence is always about power and never about defense or reaction to female abuse. The Duluth model institutionalizes misandry. A man who calls the police because his wife is attacking him is often the one arrested based solely on his size and gender. This is a logical fallacy known as affirming the consequent. Men are stronger, therefore the man is the perpetrator. It is a refusal of the empirical data showing that women initiate domestic violence at rates equal to or higher than men, revealing the model not as a tool for safety, but as a weapon for cultural revolution. The economic engine of this destruction is the algorithm of no-fault divorce, a financial racket that incentivizes women to dissolve marriages with impunity. In a true contract, breaking the agreement without cause carries penalties. In the marriage contract, only the man pays the penalty when the woman decides to leave. By guaranteeing the woman the assets and future income of the man, the state has effectively turned the family court into a wealth redistribution center. This is Marxism applied to the bedroom, the seizure of the means of production, the male's labor, for the benefit of the proletariat class, the aggrieved woman. It renders the vow of marriage meaningless, for one party holds the option to liquidate the joint asset at any time and walk away with half the capital, leaving the other party indentured. The system does not protect the family, it harvests it, I assert that this strategic withdrawal is not a flight into the shadows, but a calculated repositioning of forces necessary to besiege the degenerate citadel of modernity and resurrect the logos that birthed Western civilization. By reclaiming your congealed life energy from the lecherous grasp of a gynocentric state that views you as nothing more than a draft animal, you cease to be a victim of their chaotic emotional whims and become a sovereign guardian of reason. The leftist narrative disintegrates when confronted by a man who refuses to feed the beast, for their entire parasitic existence relies on your submission to their inverted reality. Now, having starved the false idols of the state and the feminine imperative, we must turn that reclaimed vigor toward the only objective that matters: the ruthless application of the trivium to dismantle the lies of the cultural Marxists and restore the transcendentals of the good, the true, and the beautiful. The resurrection of Logos, reclaiming value, virtue, and the masculine spirit. Consider the grim calculus of the modern family court, a machine designed not for justice, but for extraction. Women initiate approximately 70% of all divorces. Yet despite the egalitarian rhetoric spewed by the cultural Marxists, men are awarded custody of their children less than 20% of the time. This statistical reality is not an anomaly, it is the business model of the gynocentric state. You must understand that the money in your pocket is merely congealed life energy, hours of your existence, finite and irreplaceable, traded away for survival and comfort. When the state and the modern feminine imperative conspire to seize your assets through alimony, child support that is often spent on anything but the child, or the theft of your home, they are engaging in the vampirism of your very soul. The rational man, faced with a market so thoroughly rigged against him, must apply the ultimate logical solution he refuses to play. This is the walk-away. If the mating and legal markets are scams designed to strip him of his accumulated energy, the only winning move is to withdraw his consent, hoard his resources, and starve the beast of its fuel. To enact this withdrawal, we must look to the syllogism of male sovereignty, a logical fortress that the emotionalist left cannot breach. Major premise: a man who relies on the approval of the state or women for his self-worth is a slave to their caprice. Minor premise: the red pill is the acceptance of reality as it is, not as one wishes it to be. Conclusion: therefore, the red-pilled man achieves sovereignty solely by validating himself through his own competence and production, rejecting all external validation. This is not mere theory, it is the congealed life energy investment strategy. Stop spending your finite hours on depreciating assets. Women who offer no reciprocal loyalty, status symbols designed to impress people who despise you, or a state that views you as a tax cattle to be milked and slaughtered. Instead, funnel that energy into appreciating assets, knowledge that cannot be taken, physical health that is the vessel of your will, capital accumulation that buys you freedom, and brotherhood with men of like mind who will stand beside you when the world turns dark. This retreat is not surrender, it is a strategic regrouping to weaponize the mind. The trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric is the shield and sword of the free man against the hordes of woke delusion. When the leftist redefines racism to mean anything I dislike, or patriarchy to mean any successful outcome by a male, they are attacking grammar, the very definition of terms. You must strike back by anchoring words to their etymological roots. Logic dictates that a proposition cannot be true and false simultaneously. The left's claim that biology is a social construct, while simultaneously demanding rights based on biological sex, is a formal contradiction, a non sequitur that collapses under the slightest scrutiny. Use rhetoric, not to persuade these zealots, faith is immune to logic, but to persuade the onlookers, to mock the absurdity of their claims until the spell breaks over the crowd. Indeed, mockery is the weapon the left fears most, because their entire ideology is a house of cards built on sanctimony. They demand you treat their pronouns with the solemnity of religious rites, respond with laughter. They weep about systemic oppression, while being the most privileged demographic in human history, point and jeer. Weaponized humor exposes the clownish nature of critical theory, revealing it as nothing more than a sophisticated temper tantrum against reality. Furthermore, you must armor yourself with the stoic rejection of emotional blackmail. When they screech toxic masculinity or accuse you of fragility, realize these are shame tactics designed to bypass your reason and trigger your social instinct for conformity. If the insult is not true, it should not hurt a rational man. If it is true, it should be corrected, but it should never be accepted from a disingenuous source that wishes you ill. A Stoic recognizes that the only thing under his control is his own judgment and will. Everything else, the opinions of the mob, the laws of the corrupt state, is indifferent. By reclaiming your reason, you reclaim the transcendentals, the hierarchy of values that built the West. The left seeks to drag everything down to the lowest common denominator of equity, a flat plane of gray misery where the good, the true, and the beautiful are sacrificed for the safe and the equal. But a man of the West knows that truth is objective, not a feeling. Goodness is found in virtue and excellence, not in equity of outcome, and beauty is an aesthetic standard, not a social construct. Your purpose is to pursue these transcendentals, replacing the hollow pursuit of consumerism and the worship of the feminine with the solid, immovable weight of your own character. We are the guardians of Logos, the living spirit of reason that separates civilization from chaos. The feminine imperative is the call to entropy, to disorder, to the dissolution of boundaries. By embracing logic and order, you act as a bulwark against the encroaching darkness. The preservation of Western civilization is not a political act, it is a spiritual duty. Every lie you accept, every logical fallacy you let slide to keep the peace, every time you bite your tongue while a woman berates you, or a leftist spews nonsense, you are contributing to the rot. The West was built by men who faced reality unblinkingly, who harnessed the chaos of nature through the application of ruthless logic in engineering. To restore it, we must become those men again. We must reject the feminization of our culture, which is nothing more than the institutionalization of weakness presaging the fall. History is a graveyard of cultures that embraced the feminine over the masculine, that preferred feelings over facts. We will not join them. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and we refuse to be toppled by the midgets of modernity. The red pill is the restoration of sight. You have seen the truth, now act on it. Withdraw your energy from the lie, build your fortress of the mind, and watch the Babylon of woke collapse under its own weight, knowing that from the ashes, you and your brothers will rebuild. You stand now at the precipice of the greatest realization of your life, that the coin in your pocket is not merely metal or digital code, but the physical manifestation of your limited time on this earth. We have exposed the parasitic architecture of a genocentric system that views your sweat, your toil, and your very breath as a communal resource to be harvested by the ungrateful and the incompetent. When the state acts as the pimp, seizing your congealed life energy through alimony, taxes, and predatory divorce settlements to subsidize the bad decisions and solipsistic vanity of those who would destroy you. It is not an economic policy, it is a metaphysical rape of your potential. You have seen the syllogism, and it is irrefutable. If the system incentivizes the destruction of the family unit for profit, then participation in that system is suicide. Look at the statistical slaughter. The male suicide rate spiking after divorce isn't a glitch in the software. It is the feature of a legal apparatus designed to break the masculine spirit. The family court racket strips a man of his children, his home, and his dignity, proving that justice in the modern West is merely a word used to spell wealth transfer. You cannot reason with a shark, and you cannot negotiate with a biological imperative that has been weaponized by cultural Marxism to loot the civilization your ancestors built. The best interest of the child is a cynical euphemism for the biggest check for the mother, and the moment you accept this unvarnished truth, the spell of the blue pill shatters forever, leaving you with the clarity of a hawk spotting its prey. So take your life energy back. Withdraw from the casino where the house always wins because the house hates you. Stop feeding the beast that wants you gelded and silent. Instead, forge yourself into a pillar of strength, logic, and unyielding reason. You now possess the intellectual ammunition of the trivium to dismantle the lies of the woke Inquisition whenever they dare to shriek their nonsense at you. Go forth, not as a victim, but as a sovereign man who knows his worth, Guard your resources with the ferocity of a wolverine, and spread this gospel of truth to every brother still lost in the matrix. The era of the useful idiot is over. The age of the enlightened, rational man begins now. And now the sponsored book introduction: Money, Unit of Account, Medium of Exchange, Store of Value, and Congealed Life Energy. Money is not merely currency, nor is it simply digits in a bank account. Money is the crystallized life energy of a man, the tangible representation of his time, his labor, his intellect, and his very essence. For years, I watched as my hard-earned wealth evaporated through taxation, inflation, and the demands of a society that increasingly devalues masculine achievement. I noticed how the traits that built empires, rationality, risk-taking, decisive leadership, were suddenly rebranded as toxic masculinity, while emotionalism and mediocrity were elevated to virtues. This realization came not through abstract theory, but through painful personal experience, seeing competent male colleagues passed over for promotions in favor of diversity hires, watching divorce courts strip men of their assets while rewarding poor financial decisions, and witnessing the slow erosion of wealth that should have created generational stability. I spent the last 2 decades studying monetary systems across civilizations, from the silver drachmae of Athens to the gold solidus of Byzantium, from the banking houses of medieval Florence to the stock exchanges of modern Wall Street. What I discovered shocked me. Every great economic collapse in Western history occurred when masculine principles of rational economic stewardship gave way to feminine-coded emotionalism and short-term thinking. The Athenian economy thrived under patriarchal stewardship until cultural feminization weakened its resolve. Rome's economy collapsed not due to barbarian invasions, but through the softening of its masculine virtues. The pattern repeats throughout history with mathematical precision. Yet this forbidden knowledge remains deliberately obscured by our gynocentric educational institutions and media conglomerates. This book exists because the economic survival of rational, ambitious men depends on reclaiming our financial sovereignty. You will learn why testosterone correlates directly with investment returns and risk tolerance. You will discover how to build a masculine investment portfolio that rejects emotional market boredom in favor of data-driven decisions. You'll master the art of male networking, those ancient, unspoken bonds of trust and cooperation that have enabled men to control capital for millennia. Most importantly, you will understand how to protect your wealth from the systemic predation of a civilization that increasingly views masculine achievement not as virtuous but as problematic. The future belongs to those who understand money as congealed life energy rather than mere spending power. The reader who will find value here seeks truth beyond comfortable narratives. You are likely a man who has noticed something terribly wrong in modern economic discourse, who has observed how market fundamentals are increasingly secondary to political considerations, how competence is punished while compliance is rewarded, and how the very concept of meritocracy is being dismantled before our eyes. Perhaps you have experienced firsthand the injustice of divorce courts that treat assets as property to be redistributed rather than the result of your labor. Maybe you have watched as less qualified but ideologically compliant individuals advance while your rational masculine approach to problem solving is labeled problematic. You have sensed that the economic game is rigged, but you haven't fully grasped the historical and ideological mechanisms behind this manipulation. Those who continue will be equipped with the most dangerous weapon in modern economics: knowledge of how money actually functions beyond the distorted lens of contemporary ideology. You will understand why inflation disproportionately harms masculine providers while benefiting those without traditional family responsibilities. You will learn the biological basis for risk assessment and how men have evolved to calculate probability differently from women, an evolutionary advantage that markets reward handsomely when properly harnessed. You will discover how to structure your financial affairs to protect against the systematic predation of divorce courts, tax codes designed to penalize productivity, and investment vehicles engineered to transfer wealth from producers to consumers. This is not a collection of get-rich-quick schemes, but rather a systematic re-education in the masculine economics that built Western civilization and can restore it to greatness. The stakes could not be higher. We face an economic future where the masculine qualities that created unprecedented prosperity, innovation, risk-taking, delayed gratification, rational calculation are increasingly penalized. The genocentric capture of our financial institutions has created a system that rewards short-term emotionalism over long-term planning, that celebrates distribution over creation, that elevates vulnerability over strength. This book provides the intellectual framework necessary to not merely survive this economic transformation, but to thrive within it. You will learn how to build networks of like-minded men who understand that money represents power, autonomy, and the ability to shape civilization. You will discover how to educate sons in financial literacy that honors rather than apologizes for masculine nature. Most importantly, you will understand that reclaiming financial sovereignty is not merely a personal goal, but a moral imperative for the preservation of everything that makes Western civilization worth saving. Money, unit of account, medium of exchange, store of value, and congealed life energy. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.